I have my 20 blocks cut and have interfacing on them. They are not squared yet. That's what I will be doing next. It always makes me nervous, making sure that they're going to be all right. Once I get them squared, I will be cutting, I don't know, maybe 1.5. Don't think I need 2.5-inch strips. I have some solid navy blue that I will be putting in between the blocks and actually bordering top, bottom, and sides. And then I'm going to find another fabric, hopefully baseball related, to do a border and to do the back. So that's kind of the plan. So I'll come back when I figure out how I'm going to square them up. To square my blocks up to 14.5 inches, basically, because it's jersey, whatever, and trying to cut these, they're certainly not square, and they're not always quite 15 inches square. But this one is pretty much, so it's a good example. It's pretty much 15 inches square. So what I'm going to do is go around all 4 edges and just take off another 1/4 inch. And then I double check my measurements, and it's a 14.5 inch square. So as long as it fits in that 15 inch square right there, I'm pretty well set at squaring it off. They do look better once they're squared. I kind of started with that bottom row and working my way up. It's amazing the difference it makes. I'm always kind of surprised once I square something up, the difference and how it looks. So I've got 6 of them done. And I don't know why I started at the bottom, but I did. So there you go. I don't think I've done a video on squaring up the blocks for the t-shirt quilt. This jersey, cutting out front parts of jerseys is not an easy thing, and these are not. They're supposed to be 15-inch blocks. However, some of them are pretty good at being 15 inches, which makes it easy. But you can see on this one comes up a little there, this goes in a little there, and this goes down a little there. What I'm doing is I'm cutting 1/4 inch off all 4 sides, which brings it down to a 14.5 inch block. So when I see something like this, I'm just making sure that little jig right there is no more than a 1/4 inch. And as I put my ruler, oops, sorry, which one am I doing? Right up there. 3rd line there, 3rd line there. Then you can see right here is just a 1/4 inch, so I can just get it straight. And I've done it for the other sides as well. So I'm going to stop the camera and put it on its little stand, and maybe you can see me cutting it. So I'll be back. This is where the rotating cutting mat really comes in handy. In fact, that's why I bought it, was for squaring up blocks. So I'm going to take my first side and measure it at a 1/4 inch in. This side doesn't have any glitches to it. It's just a straight 1/4 inch. I can take that one off. Turn my mat. I do the second side. This one has the neck one, which is just a 1/4 inch. Take off part there, part there. that side. Oops, just pulled that off a little. That's not good. And the last side. So now you can see there is a 1/4 inch taken off all 4 sides. And it's a pretty straight block. I have most of my blocks squared off, just 2 more up there to go. And they always look so much better when they're squared. I'm always amazed at how much better they look once they're all nice and squared. So on the very top row, last 2 to do, and then I'll be doing the sashing. So we're moving right along. So this is the fabric I'm going to be using for the sashing. It's a navy blue. And I'm going to be cutting this in 1.5 inch strips. I'm going to have to piece together probably both the horizontal sashings to do the long rows and also the sides, top and the bottom. So hopefully I have enough in the yard to do that. We shall see. A lot of this for me is guesswork. So we'll see how far I get with my yard of fabric. Should be a lot of 1 All I'm doing is 1.5 inch strips, which means there'll be 1 inch between each of the blocks. I have all of the vertical rows done. And I was doing the vertical rows. I had the bright idea, which was really not so bright, to put a strip on each end. I was thinking of the 20 that I did and was thinking, well, that'll put the outside sashing, but I'm not connecting the rows. I'm putting sashing in between. I thought, well, that's not going to look too good when I put a horizontal piece across there and each of those strips is separated by that horizontal sashing. So what I'm going to try to do, and I'm a little leery about it because it's sewing and it's cutting and spacing, is doing that. Putting a red square in between the strips. That will solve the problem, and actually I think it will look quite nice. I just did 1 strip and put it up there to see how it would look. And I like it. So what I did was I just had another piece of, I'm going to do them all red. I just had a piece of back of a t-shirt or whatever, one of the jerseys, press some more interfacing on it. And certainly didn't take much to cut up 30 1.5 inch squares. So I've got that. I just don't have enough of the navy fabric, so I'm going to have to get another 1/2 yard. Interesting side bit. When I first started cutting my 1.5 inch strips, I figured I needed a new blade. It felt like it was getting dull. Well, if you ever bought blades in a pack, they're really all like stuck together. I changed the blade in my cutter, start cutting strips, and it's not cutting well. I'm like, what the heck is going on with this? Unfortunately, I did way too many before I could figure it. I kept trying, and I switched the blade, turned it over, did something else, did another blade. And I couldn't figure out why it was cutting so rough. It just wasn't cutting through. Well, I had 2 blades together. I don't think it's the first time I've done that. These blades are so thin that when they come packaged, they're actually stuck together. I had 2 blades in my rotary cutter. No wonder it wouldn't cut much better when I only had 1 blade in there. But these are kind of rough, and I don't think I'm going to use these. I have to get more fabric. Even if I did use those, I wouldn't have enough to do all the strips in between, because I need to do top and bottom and in between all the rows. So tomorrow I'll get another half a yard of that navy blue and try that for the horizontal sashing and say a little prayer that I get all the red squares lined up where they need to be and that everything fits and it's not all cockeyed. So that's where I'm at. I believe I left off saying I was going to do the red squares, and I think it's going to look really nice. But what I did was, for that first row, which I'm not going to be using, is I used part of the jersey again. And I realized it got caught on some of them. It doesn't sew that great, and why work with jersey when I don't have to? So, right idea. I've got red fabric. Oh, I had this leftover red fabric, and I think it looks really nice. So, I am just using regular fabric, and I am strip sewing these together. I've got 6 rows of sashing to do. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the bottom is 6. So I've got 6 rows here, and I've got 2 reds and a blue, and I'm starting with my second blue sashing now, and I'm just going to run those through the sewing machine, and I should have these 6 rows of horizontal sashing done pretty quickly. And it certainly sews a lot better than trying to do the jersey. You know, I'd also put on more of that and cut off my strips, but no, much easier with the red fabric. So that's where we're going with it. We'll see how this turns out. It's a lot of little squares that have to match up exactly. I'm not real good at that, so we'll see what happens. I got all of my horizontal sashings made, and I've sewn them to the top of 1, 2, 3, 4 rows. So then I'll need to sew the rows together and put on the top row, and then on top of the second row, on top of the third row, and on top of the fourth row. So the last row will get 1 on top and 1 on the bottom. Can't look too closely because it almost seems like the sashing in between the vertical is not quite the inch, and so the red blocks don't exactly match. But standing from here, I really can't tell too much, so let's just keep hoping that that works. Debating, I was going to put another border on it, and I may still do that, just a small border or 2-inch border or something of the other fabric that I'm going to use on the back. So we'll see. I want to get this all together first so I know the exact size, so I know how much fabric I need to order to do the back and potentially a border. So that's where we are. I have the center of the quilt done. I have contemplated whether or not to put on a border, but I think I will. It just needs that finishing touch. So it came out pretty big. It actually measures 62.5 inches wide by 77.5 inches long. So it is a good size quilt. So, as I've always said, none of my quilts are perfect, and some of my red squares are too big, or the sashing in between was too small, one or the other. Some of them match pretty good, some of them don't. That's the way my quilts go. Just don't look too close. But that part is done. So now I got to figure out what to get for, how much fabric to get for the outside border and then the back.